Cuba is set to conclude trials on a COVID-19 vaccine candidate in January 2021. Malian President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta announced his resignation, saying that he did not wish blood to be shed after soldiers carried out a mutiny on Tuesday. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas held a meeting with Palestinian resistance movements on Tuesday to address the deal signed between Israel and the United Arab Emirates. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, and I'm Katrina Goss. Cuba is set to conclude trials on a COVID-19 vaccine candidate in January 2021. According to information on the website of the Cuban Public Registry of Clinical Trials, the results of the trial named Soberana 01 on the vaccine candidate, which was registered on August 13th, will be made available in February 2021. And Cuban authorities have reported that studies are ongoing on 4 possible COVID-19 vaccine candidates, which are being developed by researchers at the Finlay Institute of Vaccines. President of the Cuba Pharma Biotechnology and Pharmaceutical Industries Group, Eduardo Martinez Diaz, has noted the solid progress made in these studies, while also noting that finding a COVID-19 vaccine is a priority for the entire biotechnology industry of the country. Malian President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta has announced his resignation, saying that he does not wish blood to be shed after soldiers carried out a mutiny on Tuesday. In a televised address, Keïta said he was also dissolving the government and parliament. The President and Prime Minister, Boubou Sisi, were arrested by soldiers at the President's residence in the capital, Bamako, at 4:30 p.m. local time on Tuesday by soldiers and taken to a military camp following reports of a mutiny Tuesday morning at an army base in Kati, located 15 kilometers north of the capital. The news of the possible military coup drew condemnation from regional powers, the African Union and the United Nations Secretary General, warning against any unconstitutional change of power. Mali has seen months of opposition protests calling for the president's resignation, with attempts by the Economic Community of West African States to mediate and promote a power-sharing deal, failing to stop the unrest.
I would like at this precise moment, while thanking the Malian people for their accompaniment throughout these long years, for the warmth of their affection, to tell you my decision to resign from my functions, all my functions, from this moment on, and with all the legal consequences, the dissolution of the National Assembly and that of the government. May Allah help and bless Mali.
On Tuesday, the United Nations Security Council addressed the worrying situation surrounding the FSO Safer Oil supertanker, which has been anchored north of the Yemeni port of Hodeidah for 5 years, while also noting the humanitarian situation in the country in the midst of the ongoing conflict.
The members of the Security Council reiterated their deep alarm at the growing risk that the Safer oil tankers could rupture or explode. They noted that it has now been over a month since the Houthi announcement approving UN access to the Safer oil tanker. The members of the Security Council expressed their deep concern at the funding shortfall, which exacerbates the acute malnutrition in Yemen, and called on all donors, including in the region, to step up pledges and swiftly disburse funding to the United Nations and save lives.
Authorities in Greece and Cyprus continue to call on the European Union to take action following Turkey's latest moves in the eastern Mediterranean region.
An anachronistic behavior on the part of Turkey that negatively affects the efforts and the real will of Greece and Cyprus for conditions of security and stability to prevail in the wider eastern Mediterranean region. For a long time, Cyprus and Greece have pointed out that the appeasement of Mr. Erdogan will result in an unprecedented escalation of Turkey's delinquent behavior, and unfortunately, this is what we are experiencing today in different directions and at different levels. The escalation of Turkish aggression is directed against the European Union and must therefore lead to the escalation of the European reaction to deal with it. Turkish provocations show contempt for the clear positions of the European Union, the US and the states of our region. They denigrate European values, international law and the law of the sea.
Turkish authorities announced on Tuesday that preparations are ongoing for the reopening of schools on September 21st, despite reporting increases of over 1,000 coronavirus cases per day.
Within the framework of the protocol we signed with the Turkish Standards Institute and the framework of the protocol signed by the Ministry of Education, about 2,000 inspectors are currently being trained. These inspectors will evaluate our private and public schools and will give out My School is Clean certificates to our schools that meet these standards.
In the school's common areas and in specific points, there is hand disinfectant and stickers calling for 1 meter of social distancing. And our classrooms are widely spaced and were arranged so our students, so our children can sit while social distancing. We haven't seen any issue or anything. In this regard, we are very happy about our school.
Kenyan health authorities confirmed 271 new COVID-19 cases on Tuesday, pushing the total over 30,000.
Today we report 271 people who have tested positive after sampling 4,019 cases in the last 24 hours. We now stand at 30,636 positive cases in the country, and we have also pushed our cumulative number of tests to 398,585. Among these 266 cases that we are reporting today, all of them are Kenyans, with the exception of 4 who are foreigners.
And Kenyan authorities also called on young people to avoid reckless behaviour and observe restrictions in order to curb the spread of COVID-19.
Young, healthy people without any underlying condition also succumb to this disease. So the messaging must now be tuned, and we'll continue to urge these young people to stop the reckless behavior, the feeling that they are immune to this disease, the flouting of the regulations that have been put in place so that we don't spread this disease.
Nigerian health authorities confirmed 410 new COVID-19 cases on Tuesday, bringing a total number to almost 50,000. The majority of the new cases were reported in Nigeria's largest city, Lagos, with 210 cases, followed by the Federal Capital Territory with 45 new cases and Ondo State with 30 cases. Meanwhile, more than 37,000 people have recovered from the virus. The death toll stands at 981 after 4 new fatalities were reported this Tuesday. And we'll be right back after this short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. Former Colombian President Álvaro Uribe, who's under investigation for alleged witness tampering, resigned from his Senate seat on Tuesday. The Supreme Court placed Uribe under house arrest earlier this month on charges of bribery and procedural fraud, representing the first time ever a Colombian court has detained a former president. Senator Uribe sent a letter to the Senate President, Arturo Char, explaining the reasons for his resignation. The Colombian Senate is due to vote in a plenary session whether or not to accept the move. Meanwhile, Colombian lawmaker for the Alternative Democratic Pole Party, Iván Cepeda, noted that Uribe's resignation does not affect the ongoing investigations against him.
The fact that Uribe resigns from the Senate does not mean under any circumstances that the Supreme Court of Justice loses its mandate to advance in the investigations and to summon Uribe to a trial. Uribe, as a senator, used members of his legislative office in order to contact several prisoners in different prisons across the country, paramilitaries, so they could testify against me. Likewise, using his status as a senator, he started a campaign around a debate I initiated in the Senate and also another debate I participated in the House of Representatives. In this sense, the mandate to rule on these acts still lies in the hands of the Supreme Court of Justice.
Brazil's indigenous Kayapo people have been blocking a main highway through the Amazon region since Monday to protest the lack of healthcare amidst the coronavirus pandemic, as well as the destruction of the Amazon rainforest. After blocking the road for over 24 hours, the indigenous activists on Tuesday allowed trucks that had been parked for miles to pass. However, they noted that they plan to continue blocking the highway until federal authorities respond to their demands and negotiate urgent issues that have been ignored by the Bolsonaro administration. They're calling for personal protective equipment and medical attention following the spread of the coronavirus in their communities, which has led to the deaths of several of their elders. They also denounce the ongoing destruction of the Amazon through fires and deforestation, and have voiced their opposition to infrastructure projects that threaten their land. And the Brazilian government of far-right President Jair Bolsonaro has proposed budget cuts in the health sector in the midst of the crisis sparked by the coronavirus pandemic. Experts warn that if the 2021 health budget is approved, it would further undermine the already weak public health system. National Health Council Technical Advisor Francisco Funcia calculated that the budget represents a cut of $35 billion for the next year. Specialists have stressed that it's necessary to guarantee an emergency platform in order to cover the expenses for vaccination against COVID-19 and invest and expand healthcare centres, among other actions, in order for Brazil to overcome the crisis sparked by the pandemic, which has seen it report the second highest caseload and death toll in the world. And also in Brazil, the coronavirus pandemic is causing an increase in the number of homeless people. Before the pandemic, local authorities counted more than 200,000 families waiting for adequate housing in Sao Paulo, a city of 12 million. According to the human rights and research group Lab Cidade, more than 2,000 families have lost their homes in Sao Paulo state since March, as they have been unable to pay rent, having lost their jobs in the midst of the pandemic, while another 1,000 face the same risk in the coming weeks. Meanwhile, according to city authorities, at least 28 homeless people have died and some 286 have been infected with COVID-19.
I started working on December 19th of 2019, but then in the middle of March, more or less, I lost a job due to the pandemic, and since then couldn't find another one, so I had to come back to the streets again.
In Chile, Mapuche's spiritual leader Celestino Cordova has signed an agreement with the government and called an end to his 107-day hunger strike. Negotiations between the Ministry of Justice, the Mapuche Ancestral Authority, the Medical College and the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights concluded with at least 8 agreements reached. According to a statement issued by the Ministry of Justice and Human Rights, included was the authorization for Celestino Cordova to visit his home and sacred altar for 30 hours after having made a full physical recovery, for which he is to remain in the Nueva Imperial Hospital, where he was recently admitted. Once recovered, he can opt to be held in a semi-open prison regime, which would see him serve his sentence in an education and work centre. The same would apply to other Mapuche political prisoners if they agree to end their hunger strikes. Venezuelan Foreign Minister Jorge Arriaza received his Turkish counterpart Mevlut Cavusoglu this Tuesday. The Foreign Minister signed several agreements to strengthen bilateral cooperation in the economic, social, educational and cultural fields. Later in the day, the Turkish Foreign Minister met with Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, highlighting the cooperation agenda to guarantee and safeguard the interests of the two countries. During his daily press conference on Tuesday, Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador commented on a widely circulated video that appeared to show the corrupt activities of former Senate staffers. The video release comes in the midst of an ongoing investigation into widespread corruption under the former administration.
This video that was released is quite strong. It shows the filth of the regime of corruption that prevailed because of this money was used to buy wills, consciousness, votes. I would like this to be considered a matter of state and for the Attorney General's office to report what Mr. Lozoya has testified, to know the complete complaint and to know if this is the video Lozoya presented as evidence or another, to know everything the Attorney General's office has.
Cuban health authorities provided an update on the number of COVID-19 cases in the country this Tuesday.
As a result of the analysis of these 4,294 samples, 44 people tested positive for COVID-19. With these results from yesterday, the country accumulates 336,333 tests conducted and 3,408 people diagnosed with COVID-19.
And the National Director of Epidemiology at the Cuban Public Health Ministry also made reference to the number of people who have recovered from the virus.
With these 102 recoveries yesterday, we have a total of 2,794 patients, or 82% that have recovered in our country.
And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas held a meeting with representatives of Hamas and other Palestinian resistance movements on Tuesday to address the deal signed between Israel and the United Arab Emirates to normalize their ties.
They tried to delude the world that the United Arab Emirates came to us with a great achievement, which is the rejection of annexation, as if the Palestinian issue is only a matter of annexation. We confirm once again that our position on this three-party agreement will apply to any country that understates this act, normalization from the Arab and Islamic countries. This national conference confirms the consensus to reject the normalization step taken by the United Arab Emirates with the Zionist entity, because it represents a treacherous stab on the back of the sacrifices and steadfastness of all Palestinian people, as well as the sale of the Palestinian cause at a low price and little money. It did not bring anything but shame and loss to the Emirates and the Arab and Islamic nation. We call on the brotherly people of the Emirates to reject this normalization and the necessity for all people of the Arab and Islamic nation to reject the normalization, because Israel will not be a neighbor, but rather the enemy of the nation. We are continuing to resist the normalization, the deal of the century, and the annexation of territories.
And a protest took place in front of the United Arab Emirates Embassy in Tunisia's capital Tunis on Tuesday to reject the United States brokered deal between the country and Israel. Demonstrators stressed that the move denies the rights of the Palestinian people. The latest peace agreement is the third signed between Israel and an Arab nation, following similar deals with Egypt in 1979 and Jordan in 1994.
This rally is to denounce what the United Arab Emirates has done, a step towards normalization with the Zionist entity, which we consider shameful and which testifies to a denial of the rights of the Palestinian people through Israeli integration in the region and a renunciation of the choice of resistance. We expect that the positioning of the President of the Republic will be clear in this matter. Today, the Palestinian people are surrounded after being abandoned by several states in the region. Therefore, they need all the free men in the world, and mainly Tunisia, because of its experience in the democratic transition and its free people.
United Nations authorities have welcomed the verdict issued by the Special Tribunal for Lebanon regarding a 2005 attack that claimed the life of former Lebanese Prime Minister Rafik Hariri.
The Secretary General expresses his deep appreciation for the dedication and hard work of the judges and staff involved in the case throughout the years. The Secretary General notes the independence and impartiality of the Special Tribunal and calls upon all to respect the decisions of the Tribunal. The Secretary General also calls on the international community to continue to support the independent judicial proceedings that remain before the Tribunal.
The director of the Pan American Health Organization has stressed that the COVID-19 pandemic has caused a mental health crisis in the region, while noting that domestic violence cases are on the rise in the midst of lockdowns.
The COVID-19 pandemic has caused a mental health crisis in our region at a scale that we've never seen before. It is urgent that mental health support is considered a critical component of the pandemic response. Mental health illness is a silent epidemic that has affected the Americas well before COVID-19. It is important to note that these ongoing stressors are also contributing to a related problem that needs urgent attention, a rise in domestic violence.
German Chancellor Angela Merkel warned on Tuesday there could be no further relaxation of coronavirus restrictions while the country deals with a surge in cases.
If the number of infections decreases, then we can loosen things more. If they do not decrease, then you have to think about what might be necessary. In any case, in my view, the loosening of restrictions can't happen at the moment.
Austrian authorities added the Spanish Balearic Islands to a list of high-risk regions for coronavirus on Tuesday, following a recent spike in cases.
Concretely, there will be a travel warning for the Balearic Islands starting Monday. This means that all people who are currently on holiday there can of course still continue their holiday. Those who return after Monday are obliged to get tested or to go into quarantine for 14 days.
And we've come to the end of this news brief, but remember you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesoenglish.net, and you can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. For Teleso English, I'm Katrina Goss, and thank you for watching.